The system in the United States, I'm going to make this real quick, it developed, work comp in the United States was the first social insurance system. It predated all other social insurance. And in the United States, at the time, in 1911, when the first Work Comp Act was passed in the United States, people were deathly afraid of the federal government and the the intrusion of the federal government into states' rights. It was a very highly individualistic society, and people didn't like this idea very well at all, so it was a real hard sell. Personal responsibility, giving up the idea of fault was difficult, that people should be held responsible for their faults, and we don't want no-fault insurance. So we'll see later that there's still vestiges of that in the current U.S. system. State laws tend to be highly idiosyncratic because it's a state-administered system. The federal government, unlike all other forms of social insurance, has only nibbled at the edges of regulating workers' comp in the United States, just at the edges. There's a lack of harmonization, and the problem with this is there's a lack of harmonization in the rules, and this can be a burden, especially today on interstate commerce. There's little consideration, or has historically been little consideration, of standardized forms and procedures across states. So you've seen one state's procedures, you've seen one state's procedures. There's no universal standard, and I find this almost deplorable to confess this, that there's really not a good benchmark or standard for what makes a good system. What is a good system? I don't think people necessarily agree on that. There was a famous federal commission in 1972 that came up with 19 essential recommendations for workers' compensation, and the states initially, to sort of play into the theme of today, at that time the federal government was making the one and only serious attempt to federalize workers' compensation. And so this commission studied the deficiencies of state workers' compensation, came up with these recommendations, and the members of my association and the states were scurrying like mice before a cat, running around trying to pass laws. And there was a flurry of laws. People are passing all sorts of laws to adopt these 19 essential recommendations. And then the heat was let off from the federal government, and there hasn't been really much progress on meeting these 19 essential recommendations. No state has met them in entirety. And so there's been some standard attempts to set standards, but really it hasn't gone very far.